Hi, my name is Guy Lawrence and thanks for tuning into my podcast today. If you're enjoying these conversations and you want to check out more of this transformational work, be sure to come back to guylawrence.com.au and join me as we go further down the rabbit hole. Enjoy the show. Miguel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Guy, for inviting me to this podcast. I'm really looking forward to it. Feel very grateful.
Me too. Like we were speaking off air, I stumbled across you very recently on another podcast, James Wedmore podcast, and I just gravitated to everything you were talking about, and I thought I've got to reach out, and hopefully he'll say yes and come on the show, which you have. So the feeling is very, very mutual. So I ask everyone on the show, if you were on an airplane right now and you sat next to a complete stranger, and they ask you what you did for a living, what would you say?
Well, I would say I'm a consciousness engineer and I mentor business leaders in the process of superconscious activation so they can experience life and business from a state of high flow performance.
Love it.
So they either get curious or say, oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, totally. And if I was that stranger and I wasn't, when I heard you say that, I was like, wow, what a great way of framing it. And but if I didn't, I would ask, well, what's a consciousness engineer? And then, of course, the conversation would go far.
Yes, it does open up. Every time I say that I'm a consciousness engineer, people say, well, what the hell is that? And so it allows for conversation. In fact, I'm an engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer.
Oh, is that right?
So, yes.
Yeah, right. Hence the connection.
Yes.
Well, I'd love to take you back on your journey, because you have a very fascinating story and journey all around this kind of work. So maybe take us back to why you so passionately now, like you said, coming out and teaching this work right now in this time, but what led you into it in the first place?
Well, I think from the beginning, since I know myself as a human being, I have had experiences that were not from this planet, I guess. I don't know how to explain this, but I being very sensitive, like a sensitive person, since I can recall, like 3 years old, 4 years old, and I used to see light or luminescence in my room. I used to hear voices that were not like conversations, but it's hard to put up, but it was more like messages coming through. And I also could see, like around people, something very interesting, because I could see myself as being myself, that little kid, but not my little kid. That wasn't the little kid that was talking, was someone else that was talking. And that was like if I was an older person speaking through a kid's body, like a 3-4 year old kid. That drove my parents nuts, because they couldn't understand what this guy is talking about, and it was really difficult at first to understand that. And so my curiosity about psychic processes and phenomena started at that age, a very early age. And I started searching, and I was born and raised in Brazil, São Paulo. I'm originally from São Paulo, Brazil. And there, those things are very common. It's in the population, I would say. And I had several other experiences with like curandeiros. Those are healers, people who does like in Brazil it's called curandeiro. Is the name for a healer.
Is it like a shaman, kind of?
Like a shaman, but not like it's more like uh, very humble, simple people with no education whatsoever, that they just do these healings on you, energetic healings, through prayer, through things. And I can describe one event that happened, like when I was 10 years old, I think, that that age. I had a very severe ear infection and pain, and was very painful. And I was in this was in the interior of São Paulo, the state of São Paulo, my grandmother's house, and there was this man who was a friend of the family, a very humble man, a fisherman, but he was a curandero. He was one of those healers, and he took like a piece of a plant that was in the garden, nothing specific, just like a leaf, say, and he started putting this thing around my ear, just moving it around, and start saying some prayers. And in front of, my mother, grandmother, the family was there, and this guy was doing this thing. And then before everybody's eyes, the plant, which was green, became totally black and
Wow.
shrunk. And my pain was gone. And I said, man, what is this? So I really got into the process of learning. I wanted to learn why something like this happened, because I think I was connecting the dots with the invisible, which was, like, for me, very visible. It was like very present. I could see, I could, and so I start my searching for answers for my quest, and then I came across the other important aspect of this is that I used to shake a lot, and had like some kind of, like, if I was experiencing an electrical discharge in my body,
Hmm.
which I had no idea what that was. But I correlate that with uh, something that happened several times with me, which was more like telekinesis, like objects moving around.
Objects moving.
And yes, and that freaked me out, because I had no idea. I had no control. I didn't know what was happening, and it was a bit scary too. And
Was this all happening still around about 10, 12 years old?
10, 12 years old.
Yeah.
So when I was 12, then I start looking for more research, and I start connecting with shamans from the Amazon. In fact, because my dad was friends with one of the pioneers in making contact with tribes in the Amazon.
Wow. Because I
And
was going to ask you, because there was no internet back then, and you probably had a library to go to look. I was like, how do you research that in that, in Brazil in that
yes,
time?
so, well, with the shaman was more like I had this real indigenous guy to talk. He was communicating. He spoke Portuguese. They had another language in their tribe, but this was, people who were kind of, they were bringing these people to make contact with civilization and all that. And this person was already, for a few years, traveling from the Amazon to São Paulo and all that, because
Right.
they were creating like a reserve for these people, which unfortunately today has shrunk tremendously, and they are killing these people. It's an absurd what they do with the tribes there. And but anyway, that was like really good, because I could learn from this guy's perspective the the contrast that they believe that spirit is everywhere in everything. So there are no gods. It's more like the spirit of the tree, the spirit of the fish, the spirit of the animal, and all that. So everything is energy, basically. That's what they're describing as a form of a spirit. So that got me really interested in energetic experiences. And in Brazil also, you have a large um, population of a philosophy, people that are part of a philosophy science called spiritism philosophy, which was which came from France from the 19th century, but it landed in Brazil and there it spread like crazy. So there are over 40 million people that follow these things there, and thousands of spiritual centers. And in these centers, I mean, talk about woo things, you know. You have everything, and you have those very um, developed mediums. So mediumship is very present in these centers. All the centers are, in fact, that they have a guide, a spiritual guide that guides the center. So the whole and there
Wow.
is a whole philosophy around this there too. You know, it's like and they mix science with religion and philosophy. So it's like three things together, and it's beautiful. But there I start learning um, the basics of mediumship or channeling.
How old were you when you started going to this school?
12, 13.
Wow.
Because I needed to control I had zero control over these things that were happening. They were driving me
It would just
crazy. It's
happen.
like, yes, it
Did your
was,
parents believe you and were happy for you to go
they,
there? Or
no, I did all on my own. They couldn't even understand. That was like, when people don't understand, they don't want to learn this because it challenged their belief systems.
of
Although
course.
my parents were not religious in a sense, but Brazil is the largest Catholic country in the world. So it kind of, they didn't want to know, but they were happy that I was going and finding my own answers.
Okay.
So they were not blocking me or saying that I was nuts and all that, you know. Um, and in these centers, I felt normal. I felt like I wasn't weird. I was like a normal person. I just had this awareness, and I could see that other people had the same awareness too, or similar things, or even crazier. I mean, if you look at some of what these mediums, what they do, it's like, it's crazy. I mean, it's really like mind-boggling to see. And I start studying because it was fascinating. I mean, how, like, there are many types of mediumship. One of them is when you close your eyes in these centers, they do that a lot. They close your eyes and you start writing, you know, like
Oh,
it's
wow.
called psicografias. And so you are just downloading information and writing. The guy with eyes closed, and just you see the hands moving at very high speed. And some people just, at that time, there was no computer. These guys used pen, pen and paper. And there was always someone there just changing the paper to give fresh paper for because the person was just like a machine writing. And other thing that was fascinating, I mean, you can say, well, maybe this guy, you know, but some people would ask them, do in English, and the guy immediately would shift to English, German, any kind of language you would ask, the guy would continue writing in that
Wow.
language. I mean, how do you explain something like this, right? So I decided that I would explain that one day.
Wow.
So I
Wow.
started studying it, you
And,
know, but
and how long did you go to that school for?
until I was 20 years old.
Okay. Okay.
So it was about 6 years. And there were several centers. I went to a couple, three centers that were my favorite, you know, that was a little bit more kind of normal for me, you know, that I felt affinity for and all that. And but I also, the problem, it's not a problem, I won't say that, but for me was like, because it was associated with some kind of was based on Christianity too. They had their own explanation about, you know, the gospel according to Spiritism, for example. So there were a lot of messages, like religious messages in a sense. And now I understand that the reason they adopted that as well is because to kind of have a peaceful existence, coexistence with Catholicism in Brazil. So that's what attract, because Catholics had their understanding, but this philosophy would open up the understanding in a much bigger way. So it's like you have reincarnation, you have karma, you have all kinds of stuff, different levels of existence, planes of existence. It's fascinating. So
it is fascinating. And, you know, it's really interesting because I never grew up in any kind of religion. Okay. My religion was rugby union growing up in Wales. And so I never had any concept of anything, no framework or structure. And I'm kind of happy with that now, to be honest with you, because it allowed me to formulate my own opinions and ideas without it kind of being indoctrinated for somebody else's ideas, if that makes sense.
well, sure, it does.
But then science was the language that really started opening me up to this work, from interviewing so many people. But then from that curiosity, I was actually having embodied experience and starting to experience some of these things you've spoken, not to this depth, but I was having embodied experience and actually feeling frequencies and feeling energy and feeling that something else was coming through. And then once that happened, it allowed me to then break down my fundamental beliefs that I didn't even know I had the whole time. And then from there it opened up, and hence why I got this podcast and passionate and I'm bringing it out. You know, it just fascinates me to no end from that. And the question I wanted to ask you is, do you think everybody has the ability to learn this work?
Oh yes, definitely. Although there are different levels and skills that one develops, you know, like
So it
for
is a skill.
someone it is a skill that it has to be honed, you know, and also for one to gain control over it. My whole thing wasn't only curiosity, it was like I wanted to have more control over it, because to function in this 3D world with all this stuff, you know, it's like you think you are a bit nuts. So so I want to have this skill. So my main goal was to understand, and I also have a very pragmatic and analytical mind, you know. So after that, I start doing. I went to engineering school, and
That's so opposite. Yeah.
yeah, and engineering school was really good for me because it gave me a very good grounding in science, and to search for explanations in everything and not take anything for like a mystical experience or esoteric or anything like that. So I wanted my work to be free of those interpretations, not judging them, because they're beautiful, wisdom traditions are beautiful and all that, but I was never aligned very much with the concept of gods, goddesses, and things like that. You know, so I had to work really to find a way of to explain these things without bringing the power outside of myself. I said the answer is within, and it's here. It's the kingdom of God is within you, right? So, so I always believed that we are gods, we are creators, and we are co-creators. So that I always had that very strong belief from since I was 3 or 4. You know, I had that very strong in myself. So when I encountered those explanations and those religions and traditions, for me it was like, okay, how can I separate that
Got it.
from the skill, from the development? Because they bring that too. They bring, you know, some of those things that you learn are based on wisdom traditions, are based on old, you know, meditation from 20 centuries ago or whatever. So I said, no, I'm going to update this information. And
Beautiful.
and that was my mission.
Yeah, because it's almost like it's been able to, we always have to attach meaning to every experience that we have, and then the meaning we attach to it is always supported by a core belief system, and I think that's where it can get quite messy.
Yes, because we tend to give our power to the belief system. So we
Yeah,
start experiencing that the pattern of a belief system instead of the essence of the information. So I always try to make that distinction very clearly from the beginning in my work. Two
yeah.
separate things. And then I studied in America in the two, I would say, largest psychic schools that
Oh,
were
really?
available here. Yes,
At
and
what age was this? Was
sorry.
this after your engineering or before?
Yes, after my engineering.
Huh.
But before that, I had a near-death experience through a car accident,
Oh,
and
wow.
where
How old were you then?
yeah, I was 21,
Oh gosh. And what happened?
and I spent 1 year laying flat on a hospital bed without moving.
Oh my gosh.
So that was really crazy, and I would say that I credit a lot of my recovery due to the spiritual healings that I was receiving from the centers,
Really?
and long
They were
distance
sending group
healings.
intentions.
Yes,
Because
through the ether.
yeah, look, I'm happy to talk about that because it's not so woo-woo, because we do that at our retreats. We there's I looked at a lot of work of investigative journalist Lynn McTaggart. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her.
Yeah, yeah.
She wrote the book The Field and the Power of Eight, and again it was science looking at that exact things. Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
IONS, the Institute of Magnetic Science, Dean Radon is he does a lot of science work towards that.
Wow. So sorry to interrupt. So then you're laying in the hospital bed, and you had this near death experience. Did you actually die in the car, or did you?
Well, I lost consciousness for almost 2 days, I would say.
2 days.
Yes, I was completely out. But when I had after the crash, the only thing I remembered was I didn't see a tunnel, but I was a tunnel of light. Some people see tunnels of light and all that. But I was basically in the universe. That was my experience of it,
Do you
of
recall
being
it?
part. Yes, very clearly,
Wow.
and being part of this universe, and was a lot of love. I mean, was love, pure love. I only felt joy. And when I came back to my body, that's when I realized that I was totally screwed up. I was like, I'm really in bad shape here. And I had gone through the operations and all that stuff. But up until that moment, I think I woke up very joyful. I mean, I was experiencing joy, you know.
Do you still recall your when you were in that space, like you said, when you were part of the universe? Did you realize that you there was a Miguel on planet Earth, or did you forget all that? Or
That's the thing. When I recall this event, I associate with the experience I had when I was 3, 4 years old. It was similar, of being in that space. Was just that was much more intense because I believe because I was 21. So and I had life experience, much more life experience, but I don't know, it was like a relief of some sort. But what was clear to me was like a voice or something saying, go back to your body
oh,
now.
really? Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
that's when I came back.
So, so you woke up. You then realize you can't. You could you not move your body at the time? Was there like?
I was in cast, totally in traction. I was in a hospital,
Wow.
couldn't move.
And so what happened through that year then? So you said the spiritual school was sending energy to
Yeah,
you?
healing energy. You know, we can call healing energy, but
Mm.
more like um, spiritual surgeries. I think I had a few, uh, and also like just receiving love transmission. Whatever they were sending to me was more like to rebuild my system.
Wow.
You know,
Were you
the
confident? You,
doctor said I wouldn't walk,
is that
and
right?
yeah, and here I am. So I think I could transform several things. I still feel, you know, like the consequence of it, yes, but I recovered.
Amazing. And then when you were in that bed having that, where was your mindset? Were you like every day thinking, I'm going to get out of this, I'm going to walk again, or were you just open to whatever, or was you negative?
No, I was at first grateful that I was back. I think because it was like I'm not done yet,
Mhm.
and and the second thing was more. Well, I was very frustrated because was like less than a month after I had returned from my first trip, really large trip outside Brazil. I traveled around Europe, traveled in the United States, I traveled around the planet in a sense, and and came back. And like 3 weeks, I was still in the high of my this trip. You know, like a whole new universe opened up for me during the trip. I mean, going to different countries, experiencing different cultures, and all that stuff. And then suddenly you don't know if you're going to walk again and you are in a bed. You know, that was really frustrating, and was in my last year of engineering. So I was about to graduate, and I only graduated because everybody was so nice to me, and they allowed me to study at home and to do exams, and even giving me marks without doing any test because I was a nice guy, and so on and so forth. So I could graduate with my group.
Wow. Didn't you go on and become a race car driver after all this?
Yeah, that's after, yes.
Wow.
Big,
Okay.
big, yeah, I'll get to it because it's very important. People
Well,
told me I
that's,
was totally
I'm
nuts.
saying that's my association, I'm like, wow, like you go through something like that and you're racing cars later. But okay, so I'm trying to
And I
stay
was
on
a
the,
passenger. I wasn't driving the car in
but
this
still,
accident.
but still,
Yeah.
you know, it's wow, what an incredible experience. So you said that you then went on to study engineering, and then you went to two different psychic schools. Is that correct?
Yeah, then I moved, to Northern California,
What did they
and
teach you in the psychic schools? Like,
well, they teach you very
oh.
interesting things about, and and well, basically, that's when I developed the ability to really focus my energy. Was in these schools because we had to uh, own our space or run our energy in our bodies like for like 2 3 hours
Oh
with eyes
wow.
closed. That was the amount of meditation I had to do because we had to do readings. We had to read other people's energies. You know, it's like when you go and that's the whole training is to start getting to know your energy system, and then one way of doing that is to read another person's energy system.
Hmm.
So you develop your intuition like crazy,
I can
you know.
imagine. Wow.
So, and I spent 6 years doing that um, in those schools. So I've done thousands of readings, and
Amazing.
so meditation was like very deep stuff. It's not much about the technique; it's more about the practice, you know, because you can
It,
learn those techniques very quickly.
it's a theme to life, isn't it? There's a
Yeah.
repetition. There's a work ethic. Things
Yes.
and things come from that.
Because you have to improve to the point that you're not reading yourself. You are really reading energy of outside of yourself. At the beginning, in most schools and most people, and I would say most of the intuitives around, what they do is they read their own pictures. You know, it's like they read their own energy and project that on the person they are reading. So when you are doing such a training, you start to pay much more attention to your energy. So you have to be really grounded in your body and very present. Present time is key. So you collapse the wave function of all the parallel realities that are out there to stay present in that moment in one time, space continuum. So you can read that person in front of you, or it doesn't even need to be present. The person starts. It's like the spiritual centers. You send the energy, you know. So that gave me a lot of grounding with my work.
Okay.
And the engineering really helped because, again, you know, science was always part of what I was studying. and I started studying quantum mechanics at that time. So the engineering really helped me to do that, or reading the books on quantum mechanics, not going to quantum physics and all the formulas and all that. I don't like too much that.
But the language behind it.
The language, the concepts and the interpretations, that for me was like music to my ears. I really loved that because I could bring together that information with what I was seeing. But that also created, I wouldn't say conflict, but these schools, they are also attached to some kind of, I wouldn't say religion, but they had to be like a church in order to function for legal purposes here in America. Like it's because you do healings, transformations, you know, you're not a doctor, what are you? You know, so so there was part of it included the Bible and other things. So I tried to, again, to do my own interpretations. And as I developed on that, I had to even reconcile with the information I had from the centers in Brazil, which there was contradictions too. There were different perspectives on all that. And I think that really helped me because I could see that perspective and different perspectives from two different schools, basically using the same techniques, but the interpretations were different as well. You know, so I said, wow, what is influencing all this? So neutrality was my word. I said, I have to be neutral. I can't judge anything that I'm seeing here, and just allow those perspectives to be present. So
amazing. I remember many years ago somebody saying to me, Guy, just keep a beginner's mind in everything you do, you know, and it certainly helps me not try and bring my stuff into things and try and see it for what it is, without prejudice of any kind, really, or beliefs behind it.
Yes, so I had to develop that neutrality regarding religion, but what it brought to me was the desire of creating something that, the theory of everything, something that could bring together all the different approaches. Everything that exists can coexist, let's put that way. So I said, oh, this is what I came here for, is to bring unification to this. And of course, the key to this is unconditional love. You know, so that's how everything can coexist peacefully. And although with their different opinions. And that led me to, okay, I'll get to the racing. Because that led me to experience my own thing. I said, you know what? This was mid 80s. I said, I'm ready to create my own system now. And I was quite young. I was 26, 27, and I had all this information. And I said, I'm going to bring this together. And I started working on my system, developing my thing. And as I was doing this, the racing came across because I'm very passionate about the racing. You know, Brazilians do like racing very much, and I raced go-karts with Ayrton Senna.
No.
You know? Yes.
Oh my God! I only watched the documentary a few months ago on Senna. Oh. Amazing. Wow. I got goosebumps when you said that.
Yeah, I raced with him. He was 14, I was 16, and we were in different, he was a
Yeah.
junior, I was in a different class, but we were in the same weekends sharing the track.
Wow.
So, and I saw at that time, I told everybody, and he was still a kid, he was in the junior level. I said, this guy's going to be world champion. I have zero doubts about this. A Formula One world champion. I mean, the guy was just amazing. But I could observe um, also how he could get into these altered states, you know, because I experienced that as well. I had super conscious experiences driving go-karts, you know, like a very high flow. It's way beyond being the zone, you know, and um, and that stayed with me. And of course, I couldn't afford racing. Racing is very expensive. And my parents never supported me saying, go to become a race car driver. No way. But they said, if you want to go to engineering school, we pay for it. So I went to engineering school. I didn't have money to race. So, but I could see it. So the passion never left me. And when I was at that time, in mid 80s, you know, I met with became a very good friend, Roberto Moreno, who was a Formula One driver, IndyCar driver, you know, and I created some tapes for him, visualization tapes, and I said, you know, try it out and see how it helps you in your focus, in your concentration, and all that stuff. And he did it, and he really liked it. And I said, and worked for him. He became a Formula 3000 champion then before going to Formula One and IndyCar racing. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do racing. I'm going to race cars because I just have to use this for myself. You know, like if we create our own reality, can I create a reality of becoming a race car driver at this age? So this never left me. Then when I was back in Brazil, I was doing other things at that time. I sold computers for a living. I did all kinds of stuff just to do the things that I wanted to do, right? And in one of these coincidences or synchronicities, you know, I was featured in a book called Inner Source by Kathleen Van de Kief. This was in 85 or 86. And this book was a case study about channeling. Okay. And this book was translated into Portuguese and became a bestseller in Brazil. Somehow they found me in the book because she mentioned that, said that it was a Brazilian and all that. They found me and said, and contact me and say, hey, would you like to teach some of that stuff? So there I was going then to Brazil and start teaching. I wrote a book. My first book was called Perceptions. And that led me to a second book called In the Age of Intuition. This in Brazil. And I was commuting, Bay Area, San Francisco, São Paulo. And one of my students asked me if I was interested to have a center there. So we co-founded a training center in São Paulo.
Wow.
And we had many students coming through. So I start teaching this. And I start teaching in a very scientific way. I bought a EEG machine, electroencephalograph. And at that time, nobody had that. I mean, this was like, you know, and was connected to a computer was just 3 or 4 electrodes, but it was precise. And I could bring anybody into theta waves like in 10 minutes.
Wow.
Or so, you know. And I start sharing this. And when I wrote my second book, I presented in the largest human resources conference in São Paulo. And the book was the best seller of this conference. It's like largest Latin American HR, human resources conference, and everybody was selling books on management, and I was selling, and I was presenting energy management, right? And the work was very well received, and I had a lot of people coming. So I started teaching these in corporations. So today, mindfulness is popular, right? Is everybody does that. At that time, there was no way one would teach meditation in a company. And I wasn't only teaching mindfulness, I was teaching clairvoyance. And
Wow.
and and they invite me, a large global corporation, Rayovac, they are battery manufacturers. They asked me, can you create a program for us to bring coherence to our energy fields? And I mean, they start speaking my language to, they were so into the work. And I said, yeah. And the conversation led to a project where I said, okay, I think it would be easier for me to demonstrate that if we do a year-long program and I engage with the employees on a regular basis. And the best way to do this is through racing, because racing is very popular in Brazil. And because the whole thing was about how can we increase performance in the workplace using these techniques, and well-being also. The company was it's not only performance, but they wanted to improve the well-being of the company, of the workers. São Paulo is a very harsh environment. So that's what happened. They sponsored me to drive. I built a racing team here in America, and they sponsored me for me to teach throughout the year a program where I could demonstrate how you bring yourself into a state of high flow performance, and achieve results and all that, and overcome your limitations or outperform yourself.
Wow.
And for me, this was like, oh man, this is like,
Your dream
because
job.
for me,
Yeah.
I just dream job. I mean, teaching what I loved most and doing the activity that I loved most. This was really the dream job, and make money out of it too. So, and I was good at it. I started at the back of the field, and I end up at the top. I was second in the championship in my first year, kicking butt of kids half my age, without any practice. And the car was like a Formula 3 car. It was a Formula Mazda at that time, which, reasonably powerful. And I could do it without testing. I mean, those are kids that jump out of go-karts and they are testing and driving all the time. And there I was, in their gearbox, and I won a race. It was great.
Amazing.
Just to validate the process and the system.
Yeah, you had something very tangible that would
very tangible.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. So after all that, what happened next? Because I'm curious as well, because when we spoke off air, you spoke about you just putting yourself back out there, after a while. And and I want to know what happened in between.
You want to know the dark night of the soul that lasted for a long time?
Well, I'd be I'd be interested in your interpretation of what, for people listening, what would be what is a dark night of the soul?
And I appreciate that, because I think this is my mission right now, because we don't know what happens to us. You never know what's gonna happen, in a sense, even if you are psychic, intuitive, and all that stuff. And that for me was a very humbling experience, because what happened was, because of my car accident, and that I only found out after a while. Anyway, after this project, I had to close down my business in Brazil, and because I couldn't even see an airplane anymore, I was really feeling sick, and I got really sick, and to the point that I had a tumor, adrenal fatigue, post-stress traumatic disorder, depression, chronic pain. It came all at once. It was like, whoop, my life, just
What triggered that?
well, I later found out, I didn't know.
This just
When I
happened.
was,
Yeah.
yes, it happened, over a period of 3-4 years, but it was very, I mean, but when it came like a system, really a system crash, I didn't know. I did all kinds of exams. We couldn't find anything um, apart from the tumor. And and then I started reading literature on the brain, and especially people who played the NFL players that start having experience 30 years after the fact, when they started, in their retirement, people going crazy and killing themselves and doing all kinds of crazy stuff because of brain injury. And then I said, man, I think that's what it is, because it was never detected that I had a severe brain injury at that time. I never kind of correlated things. So I start studying the brain. I start studying neuroscience and start applying some principles to it. And the interesting thing here is that, yes, energy can heal a lot. We can get into a space where we are connected to the quantum field and allow this transformation to happen. But in my experience, what happened was, even doing and knowing everything that I knew at that time, I couldn't hold my energy in my body for more than 2-3 hours after meditating. And I would meditate for 2 hours in a row. I mean, I would close my eyes 2 hours and then I feel good. A few hours later, I was completely trashed. So I became catatonic. I mean, it was really hard. And then slowly I start to change. That's when I formulated my theory, and got into a framework to explain why we get so fragmented. And that's how it was. But still, I had to go through this period. So I closed everything. I just had a small coaching practice just to help pay the bills. My wife really supported me during this time. But I dedicated then my life to study how this happens and how can I transform myself. So that's what I did. And I came up with something I call core interactions theory, which is a very simple framework to explain how we manifest in the physical body, basically. And through that, I started creating new processes, new practices, and I was able to transform my life. But it wasn't overnight. It was work.
Got it. And then, wow. And when you have these experiences, how do you formulate a positive relationship with them? Because it's so easy to, like you mentioned, the tumor. I mean, it's for so many people, it's like the trapdoor of our life opens up and we fall in and we can't get back out and we go off in a wrong trajectory. But you seem to have this amazing ability to.
Well, first, because I knew, I was totally aware that I was going through this crazy shit, and I didn't know, sorry, the vocabulary, but
we've heard worse on here. That's okay.
okay. So going through this with the knowledge that I was going through something that I knew there was the bright side, because I've been there many times. Okay. I had those experiences of oneness so many times, and then suddenly I was there in the dark, really dark. It was really dark.
Wow. So you could trust.
Yes, I trust that there was an answer. That's why I never gave up. And one of the things that helped me was also not only this awareness of the NFL players, but also there were 2 movies at that time that helped me understand. One was The Beautiful Mind, about the
with Russell Crowe.
Yes. That was something that really helped me to understand what was going on with myself.
Wow.
And another one was The Aviator, with
Leonardo
DiCaprio. Yes. portraying Howard Hughes. So I was experiencing what they were experiencing in the movies. You know, that total fragmentation, being like schizophrenic, or you know, reality totally broke down. You know, you are in this universe that you don't know what's going on. You don't know the timeline you are in. It's crazy. So but I had that reference in my deep down that I said, no, this is just what I'm going through. I know this is crazy stuff in my head. I cannot listen to these things. But that's when I learned that the body uh, has this. I mean, we are bioenergetic beings. And if the body starts going through a process that you are not caring for, even if you do the most of advanced healing techniques, it didn't work for me, you know. And I was, I would say, a master on this thing. I mean, that was my living for many years, and I couldn't do it. So I had to integrate to go much deeper. That's when I came up with the ego components, the structure of the ego. And that was the turning point.
Got it. Wow. Wow. So it's as if we really need to develop the relationship with our ego, with ourself, and not just fixate and focus on the energetic aspect of it, but there's like this whole integration approach that is needed to really embody and embrace this work, I'm guessing.
Yes, because if we break that, that's the engineering aspect, the consciousness engineering aspect. It's like, okay, how can you engineer the ego? You know, and the ego is a term used all over the place. But I see the ego as the psychic structure or the interface between the quantum field and our bodies. How we function from the quantum in the 3D reality. We need the ego. We need an interface. We need to interface with our environments and circumstances. And we do interface with our environments and circumstances through our personality, through our belief systems, through our identities, and also through our body. The body is responding through all of this. So if the other components get fragmented or out of coherence with each other, that's when everything breaks down. So the work is to bring coherence to these components. So the structure, the psychic structure, becomes like coherent with the quantum field and with the 3D. And then information filters down, and that's when we start manifesting the beauty of life again. Experiencing the good feelings, experiencing those ecstatic feelings, and manifesting whatever we want to manifest.
Wow.
So, but it is work. So I did the work.
Yeah, totally. It's incredible. You know, it reminds me, I often have this conversation with Matt, he works with sound, and I work with Matt at our retreats and everything. And he's been exploring this work for 20 years. And he often speaks about, and we have these conversations, that people will come and they'll have these experiences, they do this work, but then they go back to their old selves afterwards. And carry on, and then the work almost feels like a way of escaping and not actually working with what they have to work through on the day-to-day stuff, you know. And I think, and I was guilty of that at certain points in my life too. And I think what you're breaking down, if I'm not mistaken, is really helping to look and support that and work through everything that we have to do.
Is the integration of the energy in our body. That's what embodiment is. You become that being that you are, you know, but you are fragmented. That's what you become too, a fragmented being, you know, in the body. So, and it is true, a lot of people go through spiritual processes, or they go into something, they get that weekend aha moment, and it works more as a coping mechanism, because it's like, that's why people go, they become like addicted to this kind of thing. They start going to places and weekend workshops and all that stuff all the time and doing different things. They create a spiritual salad that in the end, some people feel good. You can grow, of course. I'm not invalidating any of all those experiences are great. But what I'm saying is that it can be also confusing because you hear something from one source and then you hear from another one and then from another one, and sometimes they clash. They are not like supporting each other. Then the person feels kind of, well, okay, so which one do I choose, or how do I go? And in fact, you have to embrace all of them because they are all part of the process in a sense. So, and that's unconditional love. That's what I mean by unconditional love. You gotta forgive yourself, forgive others, bring out together, and allow a new you to emerge from that all the time. There is no end to this evolutionary process. I know that in a few years' time I'll be different than what I am now, the same way I was different from when I was growing up, and so on and so forth. So accepting change and accepting the fact that nobody holds the truth, it's up to you, my friend.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm aware
And
that I would just want to ask you a couple of questions before we wrap it up, Miguel.
sure.
And one of them is, what is your hope for the future now? You're coming back onto the scene. You're doing this work. What would you love to see happen?
I'm so excited. I'm very excited. That's why I'm doing this now, because I feel like, well, okay, I have all the information, I have all the systems, I have everything, but now people can use it, and there is a great lab outside now. The planet is the greatest lab for us to experience those transformations, because we are going through this pandemic, we are going through this crazy leadership all over the place, and political systems that they need to crumble. They need, it's like we need to kind of recreate all these systems, and people are becoming aware that they have the power to do that. We can vote. We can do all kinds of things to change the status quo if we want to, And I think the pandemic gave us a glimpse of what togetherness or oneness is, because the whole planet had to unite it. And we had this opportunity. We still have, but you see, it's, I don't know how it is for you here, but but here they are opening up the economy again, and people are going out like crazy. And then 1 week later, they had to shut down again because the thing is spreading. So people are realizing, no, we need to do something different here. We have to feel good about, I love this shelter in place. For me, it's like, I'm a caveman, so it didn't make much difference. But it was like, wow, it gives an opportunity for people to really get inside on themselves, to really evaluate what's important in life, So I'm very hopeful that we can all come together now and create effective change. I really, really am. And I feel that I'm matching my timeline. I'm in present time with the reason why I'm here on this planet.
Beautiful. And that's such a great place to be, Miguel. It certainly is. Where can I send all our listeners if they want to find out more about your work?
Yes, thank you. I have now a website called superconsciousexperience.com.
Superconsciousexperience.com. Beautiful.
Superconsciousexperience.com. And I'm building, so bear with me with that, because it's not fancy, it's nothing, but it's a place where people can get there and opt in and be part of, as I do things, but I'm building.
Beautiful. It's a flag in the ground, and it's like you can come over here. Absolutely.
Yes.
And if people pause this, there'll be a link to your website in the show notes anyway. And Miguel, I just want to ask you one last thing. Is there anything you would like to leave our listeners to ponder on before we wrap it up?
Yes. I would like to say one thing that I think can transform life. If our attention is not being driven by our core intentions, it becomes driven by our environments or circumstances, or by habitual patterns of thinking and behaving. That's it.
Perfect. We'll leave everyone contemplate on that. And that's a beautiful place to end it. Miguel, thank you so much for sharing so openly and honestly on your show, on the show today. My jaw has been wide open for half the show listening to your story. And I'm truly grateful that you came on and shared this with everyone listening today. So thank you very much.
Well, the one that is very, very grateful. This is like a blessing for me. You really gave me a blessing today, and I truly appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.